terrible. No one should have to go through this.
Cold, but I survived. I made.
It may be that I don't get to an interview for a job because I can work. It's because of how I look. I don't get that job. It had nothing to do with my skills, my experience, or anything.
Night falls and the temperature drops so fast that a single small mistake can cost you your health. While many people have warm blankets and walls to sleep behind, out there are still those who have to count every degree of cold just to make it to dawn. Strangely, they don't rely on expensive equipment. They rely on practical knowledge. Keep the body dry, block the cold ground, seal out the wind, and use cheap items the right way. Tips that sound simple, such as cardboard, crumpled newspapers, and reflective thermal layers, can be the line between shivering and getting a few hours of sleep. In today's video, I'm compiling 15 budget ways to stay warm, along with warnings about common, dangerous mistakes. Using fire in enclosed spaces, layering clothing incorrectly, letting gear get wet, or choosing a spot that makes you stand out. The goal isn't to risk it just to get warm, but to be warmer while staying safe. If you find this useful, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. And have you ever known a warming trick that truly works? Drop a comment so everyone can learn from it. Another common mistake is dressing too tightly, constricting blood flow, making hands and feet go cold first, and pushing you toward frostbite before you can react. And once circulation is compromised, the story shifts to cheap but useful insulation pieces. At a minimum, almost anything can insulate if it creates air pockets. Crumpled newspaper stuffed between layers, a scarf wrapped one extra turn, a hat that covers the ears to reduce heat loss from the head. The fewer gaps, the less wind gets in. But you still need enough ventilation so your body doesn't sweat and then chill in reverse. Keeping the top half warm is only half the equation, because the other half is often overlooked. Moisture building up overnight can ruin every effort. The ground is the real heat thief. Miss one layer, pay all night. During cold snaps, many people think the enemy is wind and air, but the fastest heat loss is happening right under your back. Concrete, frozen soil, asphalt. The body loses heat through direct contact with the ground far faster than it does simply sitting in cold air. That's why lying straight on the ground, even with a blanket, can still leave you waking up shivering, even exhausted. Understanding the true heat loss pathway is the first step to surviving a long night. The solution often starts with simple materials. Build a buffer layer that traps air between your body and the ground. Thick cardboard, foam mats, interlocking floor pads, or thin foam sheets all work on the same principle. blocking heat transfer into the ground. The drier the bottom layer, the better it performs. Once it's damp, insulation drops sharply and cold seeps in fast. When the wall beneath your back is in place, the next threat isn't the ground anymore. It becomes keeping warmth above you and against the wind. Cheap. Heat traps protect core heat before you chase warmth. Cold doesn't hit all at once. It drains you through sweat and wind drafts. People who've lived outside for years often start by blocking heat loss, a thin plastic layer used as a moisture barrier, worn close to the body before the warming layers on top. Done right, it feels noticeably warmer. Done wrong, it traps sweat and chills you the moment you stop moving. Once heat loss slows down, the next step is creating still air around the body. Still air is free insulation. Old newspapers, crumpled until fluffy and packed between clothing layers, create many small air pockets, helping the torso and feet stay less numb. The key is that the crumpled paper does almost nothing. To reduce dampness and cut down on the rustling sound, some people wrap the paper in plastic bags before stuffing it in, because unusual noise can attract unwanted attention. With an air cushion in place, they then look at reflecting the heat they already have. A thin, reflective thermal blanket helps if used correctly. The reflective side faces the body, and it's held under a wind-blocking layer to reduce heat loss. It doesn't generate heat, it only holds what you produce, so it must follow the rules of staying dry and staying ventilated. Sealing everything completely invites suffocation risk. And candles or open flame in tight spaces bring fire hazards and toxic gases. In the end, what saves people isn't magic gear, but discipline. Stay dry, block the wind, stay alert enough to choose the right shelter spot at the right time. Building shelter the right way. Block the wind, hold the shape, but leave room to breathe. A lot of people lose the fight because they build shelter on instinct, sealing every gap to feel warmer. In reality, an effective shelter has to do two things at once: cut the wind and keep a stable structure. A tarp stretched too flat is easily whipped by gusts and collects standing water. Pitched too steep, it turns stuffy and hard to lie down inside. People with experience aim for a balanced setup sloped enough for water to run off, compact enough not to draw attention, and solid enough not to collapse in the middle of the night. The make or break detail many people overlook is ventilation. When air can't circulate, your breath builds up into moisture and then chills. That's why a tent or shelter needs a natural degree of airflow to prevent condensation from your breathing moisture that will cool you from the inside as the night drifts toward dawn. A technically sound shelter is a balance, windproof yet able to release humidity. Once the shelter is stable and built on the right principles, the next step returns to the body itself, protecting the most vulnerable points before the cold digs in. Fuel to make it through the night. Eat the right foods so the body generates heat. Cold isn't just about clothing. When temperatures drop, your body works like a furnace. If it's going to burn, it needs fuel. Going to sleep hungry in freezing weather is like turning off your internal heater, and at that point, every layer you wear becomes little more than a shell. People who've lived through it often prioritize a fat and protein dinner. Peanut butter, cheese, nuts, canned foods, because they burn slowly, hold energy longer, and help the body maintain heat until near morning. A common mistake is relying on foods that fill you fast, but crash fast. Pastries, sugary drinks, or carbs by themselves. At first, you feel a brief warmth, but by midnight, your energy drops and the shivering starts all over again. Even saving a small portion of high-calorie food can make a difference. Not eating for comfort, but eating so your body has the strength to resist the cold and stay alert enough to protect itself. Once the fuel inside is adequate, the next step is figuring out how to add warmth from the outside without creating new danger. Moisture, the betrayer that can make you twice as cold. Many people don't lose because they lack clothing, but because they're wet from the inside. Even when you sleep, your body keeps breathing and releasing water vapor. That moisture slowly soaks into your clothes and sleeping bag, turning insulation into a sponge. Once the heat-trapping layer is damp, cold doesn't attack anymore. It seeps in, and you wake up shivering, exhausted, and confused. That's when you understand why experienced people obsess over one small-sounding task: blocking the path of moisture. A common survival technique is creating a vapor barrier with a thin, waterproof layer placed close to the body, keeping moisture on the inside, so it doesn't soak into the insulating layer. It's uncomfortable and can feel clammy, but in extreme cold, it can keep warmth more stable. The key is knowing the limit. Use it when the cold is truly dangerous, and avoid any hard exertion that makes you sweat, because sweat meeting cold air can become a death sentence for body heat. Once you can control moisture on the body, the next problem shows up immediately. Gear and your sleeping setup must be kept dry at all costs. Newspaper, cardboard, spare clothes, these only work when they're dry. Once wet, they lose their value and can even pull heat away faster. That's why experienced people often wrap critical items in waterproof bags, dividing them into several smaller layers so one brush with rain doesn't collapse the entire warmth system. The colder the night, the higher the price of a mistake so. The next calculation is where to lie down and how to build the layer beneath you so the ground doesn't steal all your heat. The battle at your fingertips. A warm core isn't enough. You must save the body's edges. Cold rarely takes you down first through your chest or back. It starts at the parts farthest from the center: feet, hands, ears, nose. As the temperature drops, the body prioritizes the heart and brain. Blood flow to the extremities decreases, and numbness arrives fast. The danger is that people often don't realize how serious it is because these are the farthest points from the core. And when nerve endings start losing sensation, the body is already sacrificing the limbs to protect the center. The rule for protecting the edges is warming along the blood flow and in steady cycles. Keep the neck, wrists, and areas near the torso warm so circulation to hands and feet doesn't crash. Instead of heating once and forgetting, repeat consistently so warmth doesn't free fall. Wool socks, shoes that aren't too tight, and the habit of checking for skin color changes all reduce the risk of cracking, blisters, and infection. When hands and feet are saved in time, people can keep moving, reach safer options, and avoid getting trapped in a freezing night simply because they lost feeling in a few fingertips. Daytime warming stations, surviving on the city's daily rhythm. When cold spells drag on, daytime is no longer rest time. It becomes the window to keep the body from crashing. Many unhoused people choose heated public space, legal, publicly available warming areas that help restore biological energy after a sleepless night battling the cold. There, what matters most isn't only warmth, but a few calm hours to sort documents, call shelters, text family, or fill out an assistance form. And to keep that safe corner, they follow one simple rule: stay quiet, stay neat, stay polite, and don't draw attention. Look closely and you'll see this isn't taking advantage, it's the skill of blending in. People with experience often make themselves look occupied, holding a book, checking appointment times, taking notes, or simply sitting where they should and behaving properly. A cheap drink or a small item sometimes helps legitimize one's presence in certain places, but attitude is what determines whether you can stay a little longer or must leave. If you can keep your body warm and your mind clear during the day, you've already won half the battle, because at night, the equation turns harsher. Where do you find warmth when most doors have already closed? The city's hidden heat, warmth through infrastructure, but fear the right things. A city isn't only cold wind, it also has heat circuits, running underneath places most passersby never notice. Warm air from parking garage ventilation, heat escaping near industrial kitchens, vents beside subway tunnels, pockets of warmth around laundromats or a building's utility areas. People living outside learn to read tiny signals. Ground that feels oddly warm, a faint rise of steam, a steady stream of air blowing out from a specific point. But the risks are real. Stand or sleep too close, and you can get burned. Stay too visible, and you'll be told to move. And one careless moment can cost both your spot and your safety. Warmth is not the same as safety, and hot spots are often the places that get checked the most. That's why the rule around hidden heat sources is distance and an exit route. Don't press your face or hands to vents. Don't set up too close to a walkway, and constantly watch what's changing around you so you're not boxed into a corner. Some places, like late-night laundromats, can offer temporary refuge with light, seating, and the machine's residual warmth. But you still have to stay respectful and avoid bothering others. As for hospitals or medical waiting areas, you should only go when there's a real health risk, because that's a safety net, not a substitute for shelter. And once you've found a little heat, the next question becomes, how do you hold on to it under a cover so the night doesn't drain away everything you just managed to regain? Shelters and the rules of the game. Arrive early, ask the right questions, behave the right way. During severe cold snaps, shelters don't lack people in need, they lack beds. Many places are full by late afternoon. Some start locking in the list shortly after midday. So the difference isn't who can endure the cold, but who understands the process. Intake hours, minimum requirements, what documents are needed, which days are crowded, and which are lighter. Some people are turned away not because they don't deserve help, but because they arrive 30 minutes too late, or they're missing something that seems small, an ID, medication, or contact information. In this race, time is the first ticket. The next hinge point is how you ask. People who know the system often call ahead or ask before showing up briefly, directly, and with specific questions. Are you still taking people tonight? What do I need to bring? Is there a wait list? And once they arrive, they stay calm, queue in the right place, follow instructions, and don't argue. Shelters are overwhelmed. One impulsive reaction can turn an opportunity into a slammed door. Many staff members are still willing to point you to other resources, but they tend to do that for people who respect the rules and respect them. And there's a truth few people say out loud. Connections here aren't favoritism, they're personal credibility. If you show up on time, keep order, and don't cause trouble, you're often remembered in a good way, reminded about intake times, told where winter supplies are being distributed, and guided through paperwork. The system still has major gaps, but the right attitude helps keep you from being crushed by the system itself. Once you get inside, another problem appears immediately. When you sleep in a crowded space, how do you keep your belongings, your documents, and the most important things you own safe? Protecting belongings and documents. Lose them once, fall back a month. In homeless life, the easiest thing to lose isn't clothing, it's your identity. Personal ID, assistance cards, prescriptions, and contact numbers. Lose them once, and everything ahead slows down immediately. Finding work gets harder, getting into a shelter gets harder, receiving support gets harder too. That's why many people are forced to sort what they carry by survival priority. A small pouch kept on the body at all times for documents, medication, a charger, a little cash, and bigger, replaceable items come after. Once you understand that only what you can keep with you is truly safe, the story shifts to how they protect themselves in crowded spaces. The risk isn't only theft, it's also sudden cleanups that can make belongings vanish in minutes. The know-how often starts with tiny habits. Waterproofing documents, wrapping them in multiple layers, writing key numbers on a piece of paper, and storing them in 2 different places. People who've lost their things learn to sleep with a hand still touching the bag, and to take the survival bundle with them even to the bathroom, because the price of a single lapse can be weeks of running paperwork all over again. And once the most important things are secured, the next goal is no longer just surviving the night, but preserving enough dignity to step into the day. Hygiene, health, and dignity. The thing that opens doors again. On the street, being clean isn't just about comfort, it's a ticket that determines whether people see you as a normal citizen. Slightly neater clothes, less greasy hair, breath that doesn't reek of infections. Sometimes that's what decides how you'll be treated at an intake desk, in a waiting room, or when you ask for temporary work. That's why many people cling to the most basic community resources. Places with restrooms, low-cost showers, daytime support centers, self-service laundromats, community clinics, or dental schools that offer low-cost services. When someone's appearance starts to look less exhausted, they finally have a chance to re-enter the paperwork and work cycle. Healthcare is also part of the survival network, but the boundary must be stated clearly. Emergency care is for truly dangerous situations, especially when extreme weather threatens life. What matters here is the ability to connect. Social workers, community clinics, and outreach teams can guide paperwork, refer people to support programs, send reminders for appointments, or point them to the right place to obtain medication. Respecting medical staff, respecting other patients, and going through the right door helps keep opportunities from breaking apart. When health stabilizes and daily structure starts to rebuild, the biggest question appears: how to get out, not merely how to endure. By morning, whatever water remains is still usable, warming and hydrating at once. It's a compact solution, low profile, and workable in conditions of scarcity. And the most important point is this: sometimes the chance to survive doesn't come from anything expensive, but from one right habit and one timely source of help. May those who are fighting through nights on the street find warmth, meet good people, and find a way out for tomorrow. Amen.